Good morning.
Good to see ya.
Good to be here.
Alrighty, so it is 10, so we'll go ahead and get started. So today we'll be talking about the Freud reading and using that as context. We are going to start with a little case study. I'm going to try to send the file over chat, but this has been inconsistent for me, so I'm not sure if it'll work or not. If it doesn't, I just uploaded it to Google Drive as a backup, so we shall see. It's going super slow, so just to be on the safe side, let me do this. Okay. So there is, looks like the PDF might have come through, but then Google Drive link. So go ahead and take 5 minutes or so to just read this to yourself. It's not the best scan because this is actually something I got as a copy when I was an undergrad, and then I've just sort of copied and scanned throughout the years, but you'll get enough to get the gist of it. So again, I'm going to give you, let's see, it's like 10:01 now, so I'll give you like 10:06 to just read it over, and then we're going to chat about it as a whole class. So for anyone who just signed on, I'll shoot you the Google link again here. So just go ahead and read that, and then we're going to use that to fuel our whole class discussion.
Dr. Myers, is there any way to like turn it? Because it came through sideways. How do you?
Yeah, if you download it off of Google Drive, you should be able to rotate it in the Adobe.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, in Adobe, if you right-click, you can hit rotate clockwise, and since you got to rotate it counterclockwise, you have to do it like 3 times.
Even on I have a Mac. Is that different, or this? It'll be the same probably. If I have a Mac.
If you have Adobe, it should be
okay.
Yeah, it should be the same.
Cool.
For my Mac, it opens it up on Pages, and there's a little thing at the top corner that has a little arrow and a square. You just click that and then it'll rotate it for you.
Oh, okay. I see that too.
Thanks, Kenzie.
You're welcome.
Alrighty, so if you're not quite finished, go ahead and sort of finish skimming it as we start talking about this. So this is the case of Eddie Evans, and what we're going to do to try to build a psychoanalytically based story about him is we are going to talk about his like distant past, his recent past, so things that have happened, you know, the past 6 months, year, and then what's going on with him at the present. So let's start with his distant past. So folks can unmute, raise hand, use the chat, whatever works best for you. What's going on with him? What's his family history like? What happened to him in his distant past? And I'm going to type rather than write on the whiteboard because when I write on it, I look like a 2-year-old. So actually, Quinn might write better than me. So, so what are some of the things that have gone on in his distant past?
His mom got pregnant prior to marriage, so he was probably like, you know, an unplanned, unwanted pregnancy. And when she got married, she put him out of the house to live with his aunt.
Yep. Yeah, that's
And oh,
go ahead.
and then when he was 15, his aunt passed away, and he went on to live with many other relatives.
Yeah, so here's like this one person who has been dependable in his life, and then she passes away, right? So that makes it really tricky. Sorry, I'm just gonna move the little chat box or the little video box so I'm not like staring off to the side to see you all. All right, what about his dad? What do we know about his bio dad?
It doesn't say anything about the dad. It's just about the stepdad, I think.
Yeah, so bio dad is unknown, probably never sure, right? Yeah, so what's it say about his stepdad?
So his mom got married when he was 2. And that's when, well, the husband didn't really accept him. And his mom chose to abandon him over abandoning that new guy. So.
And the new guy was also an alcoholic, I believe. Is it?
They also mentioned stepdad.
Yeah, it said he was a very angry drunk.
And then Miranda in the comments said he was forced to be independent and self-sufficient at a very young age. So yeah, I think that's a really important point too.
Yeah, it said he started doing like errands at 10 years old and worked throughout high school and college.
How did he interact with people outside his family? How did that go?
It seems like he was kind of hard to get along with. Whenever things got boring at work, he would start petty arguments.
And then what I have in my notes here is that he also had problems with authority figures.
He also, I think it mentioned that he always felt like he was being let down by like his authority figures.
Yeah, I think that's really important, right? So if you've been set up over time to just feel like people are gonna let you down, then you're not gonna trust them or want to go to them for anything. It felt like he treated most others in his childhood like clients to get work rather than having friends. Yeah. So he didn't really have a social network besides his aunt, who then passed away. Alrighty, how about his recent past? What's been happening to him recently?
Him and his wife are having issues because she's like more independent now.
Yeah, and what fostered that independence with her?
She had to go back to work to help them with financial issues, and she really like got involved in work as her kids went into school, and she like made friends because of that and kind of had her own life, and he really didn't like that.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, right?
But it said like it never took like a violent turn. He kind of just adapted like a I don't care kind of attitude towards her situation.
Yeah, I think that that's also really important, right? Apathy is really problematic in relationships, right? It's really hard to make a relationship work if one person just doesn't care. Or both people just don't care. Yeah, so he did have a child out of wedlock. He couldn't hold a job for long periods of time. I think that's also really important. He gets in arguments with supervisors.
He also had his car accident recently, like in the recent past, which caused the whiplash and what he is blaming his paralysis on.
And because of his car accident,
Sorry,
he is. Oh, sorry. I was just saying that because of his car accident, he stopped going to his job.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I think in one of his more recent jobs, a coworker he disliked became his supervisor, and that led to like even more heated arguments.
Yep. And then a note I have for myself here is who's taking care of whom? Right, so he's almost taken on this like childlike role, right? And wants his wife to take care of him. Kind of the care he never really got as a kiddo, right? If we're thinking about it that way.
Yeah, he calls her a bad mom, or not a good mom, because she went back to work and has like her own life. So I think he was expecting like her to take on the role of the mom for all three of them, the two kids and him.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and it's so interesting, right? Because we know from the research that actually working moms do a great job when they're home. I actually was just listening to a podcast this morning where they said, if you want a job done well, ask a working mom, right? So it was actually a really interesting podcast about the petticoat leaders in the late 1800s. There were actually several towns out west that had female mayors and all-female town councils. So, sorry, random factoids. But yeah, I think that covers his recent past pretty well. Let's talk about his present. What is going on? What are his symptoms?
He has a really indifferent kind of attitude, and he seems cooperative during therapy, except he doesn't want to do like family therapy because his relationship is over in his mind.
He also like isolated himself from everybody, including his family.
He's very, very angry, but refuses to accept that he's angry at his wife and family and situation.
Finnerate denies it, but I like your language better, Debbie. He refuses to accept, I think, is very accurate. Yeah, let's see what we got in the chat. We've got constant denial, yeah. Yes, minimal interactions with his kids, right?
And then I was going to say for his physical symptoms, it says his left hand and arm seem to be paralyzed and he cannot move it without assistance. But they've done testing and there's no nerve or brain damage. So,
right.
It's also interesting to note that they say that it's paralyzed, but they also said that he could grip things and hold stuff in his hand.
Yeah, so this is one of the things that happens with what we used to call conversion disorders or hysteria, and what we now call the somatoform disorders or conversion disorders, is that you'll have physical symptoms that don't make sense physiologically. So sort of the opposite of this can happen too. So for him, he doesn't, like, this part is paralyzed supposedly, right? But then he can move this. But for other people, you'll have what's called glove anesthesia, where they can't feel or maybe even move just their whole hand. I realize I'm holding that way too high. And that just like physiologically doesn't make sense because you have two sets of nerves here, right? So if they were both messed up, they would be the whole arm. So yeah, this happens a lot with people who have these type of conversion disorders, or there'll be things that just don't make sense physiologically, right? And so then that's one of the reasons we know that this is actually psychological, right? Which of course someone like Eddie is never going to accept, right? Without a lot of help.
He also has like financial issues. He has like financial issues, and that's like really stressing him out and bothering him.
Mm-hmm. How's his relationship with his wife right now?
All but non-existent.
Right. Yeah, I have living separate lives, but I like all but non-existent.
He says he's waiting to divorce after the symptoms are gone.
So it seems like he'll want her to take care of him, kind of, in some
Yep.
way. or because he's
Great.
financially dependent on her.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the descriptor I have, which I kind of like, is passive dependent relationship. And that's really both with his wife, but also authority figures in general. Sort of interesting. He's now seeing his wife as this authority figure. Again, he's seeing her in this mom role for him, right?
I think it's interesting that he went from like this indifferent type attitude and like denial about his paralysis to, it says he's turned into a helpless victim.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So he has life in a state of paralysis, right? So it's not just his hand. Yeah, Kenzie, I love your thing in the comment. He's waiting for a dramatic resolution instead of addressing them, right? He's not taking any sort of ownership for saying he needs to do this. Instead, he just... So he's got a lot of emotions going around. Jealousy, insecurity, rage. So what happened here? His life is paralyzed because, you know, his physical symptoms are a manifestation of the emotional aspects of his life. So what do we think we could actually do to help Eddie? Is there anything we could do to help Eddie? I mean, how would a psychoanalyst attack this?
Find a way to help him get acceptance, so that he can start to work on those issues instead of denying that there are any to begin with.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I'm gonna stop the share just so I can see y'all here. Yeah, he's gonna have a lot of apathy. I mean, a big thing in any kind of therapy you do is the client has to buy in, right? They have to engage. Like I used to tell my clients, it was actually for a while, Tim Gunn had his own show. It was called Tim Gunn's Guide to Style. And one thing he used to say to the women he worked with was, I can't want this for you more than you want it for yourself. Like you have to want to change, right? And so that's a big piece of any type of therapy. But certainly something as intensive as psychoanalysis, right? Where you're going to end up sort of stuck in, not necessarily stuck, although Eddie would feel stuck, right? But in this situation where you're going to, you know, be seeing someone 4 to 5 days a week, right? For an hour each time. Like you've got to be committed to that. Yes, you can, Miranda, that's a really good point. You can treat these types of things with placebos, which might work for Eddie. So again, just sort of remembering back to our research chapter, placebos are where you would give them some medication and tell them this will magically help you get better, and it's really just a sugar pill. The other thing you can do for situations like this is I had a really excellent supervisor on my placement year in graduate school. And he had like one of those perfect therapist voices, right? It was like soothing and low. And he had someone like this once. And he just sort of used the power of suggestion. Like when he met with her one day after he'd established a bond, he said, you know, sometimes when people have things like this, then they start to like feel a little bit of tingling come back. And he sort of like walked through this whole imaginary process of essentially giving her permission to let go of it. And then what ended up happening is that when he went to see her the next day, she was like, that started happening. And again, like, it's not that he tricked her into doing it or anything. He gave her permission to say, I don't have to do this anymore. Someone seen me, heard me, right? Yeah, he did seem less depressed and anxious after starting therapy. Therapy is, even if it doesn't perfectly fix you, it generally is going to make you feel better. Right? And in fact, there's even studies showing that like a placebo for therapy can just be putting on a wait list for therapy because you have hope that you'll get better. if you're on a wait list. So yeah, it's going to help in some way, even if they're not fully engaging, right? Suggestion would be totally different. Yeah, I mean, this is a problem that you'll get with people who have problems with authority figures. So I think of one of my clients that I saw my first year of seeing clients, I think, had obsessive compulsive personality disorder, which is sort of like type A personality. It's the anal personality that we've talked about. And she had some problems with authority figures. So I gave her an assignment to do, I think like between our second and third therapy sessions. And she was like, I thought this was stupid, but I did it anyway. And I was like, cool, you did it. That's good. Was it helpful? Yeah. And I mean, again, it gave me some buy-in with her, right? So yeah, this gives you an example of the type of cases that, Freud was trying to see. These people who had unexplained physical symptoms that were actually caused by psychological things. And so it, I think, kind of puts the psychoanalytic perspective in general, but in particular, Freud's reading that you all did for today about the id, ego, and the superego in perspective. So I am sharing the link to the Google Doc for your group work today. And I am going to do the breakout rooms. I'll do 5 of them, and I'll do 20 minutes.
Dr. Myers, it says we need to request access.
Dang it. Thank you, Carly. Okay.
You're welcome.
All right. Let me change it. I'm going to make it so that anyone with the link can edit it, because, and I'll recopy the link just in case it changed. That way, if you're accessing it with your non-VWU email, you can still get to it. All right, so I'm going to do 4 participants for a room. This will take the majority of the rest of class, and then we'll come back and just briefly touch base. But I do want to give you 20 minutes to give you time to talk through all the questions. And so 20 minutes, then the 60-second countdown. So I'm going to go ahead and open the rules now. And same thing as usual, I'll hang out in the main room. So pop on back if you have questions.